Hey everyone, this is Tracy Panase with the Just Between Friends sales in Oaks and in Reading, and I'd like to thank you for signing up to help at one of our upcoming events. The purpose of this video is to familiarize you with our clothing and shoe inspection policies. Hopefully this will provide clear and consistent guidelines so that when we get to the sale, we are all on the page as to what's acceptable and what is not. Just some general information about helping at the sale. We ask that you arrive 15 minutes before your shift. If you have items of your own that you would like to drop off, you're welcome to do so before or after your shift. You will check in at the team member table, and at the conclusion of your shift, you will also check out at that same table. At the table, we'll give you a name badge and an apron, and beyond that, it's important to wear comfortable shoes and comfortable clothes because you will be on your feet for the majority of your shift. It's a good idea to leave any valuables that you have at home or locked safely in your car. We do have a small office where you can place your coat and your keys. We also have water in there, which may help yourself to, as well as a small refrigerator. I'll go through the basic process of inspection, and then we're going to talk specifically about what's acceptable and what is not acceptable. So people are going to come in and they will check in at the desk, and then they will proceed on to you at clothing and shoe inspection. You'll know that they checked in if they have one of two stickers on. They're either going to have on a bright yellow I've checked in sticker or a hot pink perfect inspection sticker. If they don't have one of those two stickers on, they need to be redirected up to the front desk, because that means they have not given us their waiver, and we need to have their waiver in order for them to participate in the sale. Additionally, each consignor should have a bright colored drop-off and pickup card, and I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. If they have on this hot pink perfect consignor sticker, we're going to very quickly accommodate those folks. So that means that at the fall sale, they had perfect inspection, so that was less than 3 items were rejected at drop-off or during the course of the sale. So we're just making sure that they followed the seasonal guidelines, and you can do that by just looking at a couple of items and spot checking. Our goal with them is to get them in and out of that line as quickly as possible because they've earned that status. Anyone with the yellow sticker will spend more time with them because they're either new to JBF or they did not qualify as a perfect consignor for the fall. Some basic guidelines. All of the clothing must be brought to the sale on hangers. Believe it or not, people still come to the sale with their clothing in bins, and that is not acceptable. The only exception for hangers are onesies or sleepers under 24 months, which may be placed in a Ziploc bag. Anything that's in a Ziploc bag, you are not going to inspect. So consignors may present that to you, and you just say to them, that's great. You're just simply required to place that out on the sales floor. I'm not required to look at that. You want to make sure that hangers are all facing the same direction, and the proper way to hang for our events is the opening of the hanger is to the left, so it's forming a question mark, and the tags are in the upper right-hand corner of the garment, or if they used a tag gun, it could be on the actual size label within the clothing, or under the armpit is another good place where we advise people who are using a tag gun so it doesn't damage the clothing items. Tags should not be stapled onto the clothing. They need to be on there either with a closed safety pin or with a tag gun. No open stick pins, staplers, or paper clips. We've seen all of those. If that's the case, that does need to be corrected. And tags must be printed on white cardstock. If someone comes to you and their tags are on a light colored cardstock, that's okay. They will scan, but it does need to be noted on their inspection card because that will disqualify them for perfect consignor for the next event. Let's talk about our clothing and guidelines. What is considered seasonal and what is not? For the spring sale, clothing must be seasonally appropriate except for maternity. So we're looking for lighter weight pants, capris, of course, shorts, skirts, tops, things that you would expect your child to wear between April and September. No long sleeves over 24 months unless the item has a zipper and could be worn as a jacket. I'll show some exceptions to that. So light colored cardigans are things that are specifically a part of a collection like a gymboree or heartstrings that would be worn between April and September are okay. Jeans are okay. We allow those for both the fall, winter events as well as spring, summer. Anything holiday themed for Easter through the 4th of July. The Reading sale is after Easter. However, we will allow Easter items to be sold at the Reading event. And of course, Oaks is before Easter, so that works out perfectly. We'll take up to size 18 for boys and juniors for girls. So no larger items marked as boys that are clearly for adults. Same thing for girls. For juniors, we do have a limit, and that is 10 items. And those juniors are considered things that are 0 through 5, or can also be extra small, small, medium, large. There are specific brands that we take for juniors. They include Abercrombie, Aeropostale, American Eagle, Roxy, etc. And you will have a list at your station so you know what is acceptable and what is not for juniors. We have the same limitation for maternity. However, maternity can be for all seasons. And if people ask you about that, the reason why we limit it to 10 for juniors and maternity is because those two groups of customers tend to be fairly picky, and we do not have adequate try-on areas at the sale, and we also do not allow returns. So it just limits the amount that we can sell for those two reasons. And as I said before, we do not accept adult clothing marked as maternity or as bigger boys. So be sure that you look at that and you weed out any adult clothing. Let's talk about how the inspection process works. As I said earlier, your consigners are going to come in, they're going to check in, and they're going to be given a rolling rack. So all the clothing will be hanging. So as you review the clothing, it will be on a rack and you will push it forward. So as each item is inspected, if it's good, you push it forward and each rack extends. So you pull out the ends of the racks and place unacceptable items at the end. You don't need to explain to the consignor each item as to why it's being accepted or rejected. It would simply take up too much time. So just kind of peruse through the items. If your rack is too crowded, because each consignor only gets one rack, so if it's too thick in the middle for you to be able to push things forward, take stuff off of the rack, put it on your table so you can look at it at the table. You want to make sure you can see the entire garment, because that's how we miss things if the racks are too full and you can't clearly examine them. At the conclusion of the inspection, you want to congratulate the consignor for all the great items that they brought to the sale. So everything in the middle part of the rolling rack, you're going to say, these are fantastic items. Thank you so much for bringing them to the event. For the unacceptable items, you can explain that we are unable to take these items. You don't need to explain why unless they ask for specific details, and you'll tie them together with landscape tape and explain to the consignor that if they were rejected due to season, the consignor can bring them back in the fall with no need to retag. The tag is still going to scan in the fall. And keep the rejected items. So the consignor does not leave your station with their rejected items. They will be available for them to pick up as they exit the building. So you can explain to them that the area where they pick up their pre-sale passes is also where they're going to pick up their rejected clothing and shoe items, and they can put away their accepted items and just grab them on the way out. So let's show some specific example as to what's considered seasonally appropriate. As I said, things that are lighter weight, this is a perfect example. It's a short sleeve shirt and little matching shorts. Same thing for the girls. Here's a lighter weight fabric. Those are longer pants in that onesie, but that's clearly for spring and summer. And here is an example of a cardigan, which is designed for going over that little gymboree dress, which is clearly for spring and summer because it's white. It's a lightweight fabric So those are all really good items, and they would be considered acceptable. You can also see that the hanger is pointing in the right direction and the items were tagged appropriately. Some other examples as to what's in that are a little bit harder to discriminate. A hoodie with a zipper is okay because that's considered a jacket. And these are Abercrombie shorts that are distressed, but that's a part of the design. So although there's a quote-unquote hole in the item and lots of fraying going on at the bottom, that is acceptable. What's out? On the left-hand side here, we have a hoodie with a zipper, but it's fleece. So that is considered unacceptable. That would be perfectly fine for the fall-winter event, but it is not okay for spring-summer. Same thing with these two darling little dresses. They're in perfect condition. I think one of them even was new with tags, but the fabric, the velvet, is going to be considered more appropriate for the fall and the winter sale. A long sleeve shirt over the size of 24 months is not acceptable, as well as this Abercrombie hoodie that does not have a zipper. That would be okay for the fall-winter event, but not for spring-summer. So to summarize the clothing condition, you are looking for items that are free of rips, stains, tears, or excessive wear. You also want to make sure things are current. Things that are more than 5 years old are just not going to sell. So that's somewhat subjective, and sometimes it's hard to tell whether it's over 5 years old. But if you have really old maternity clothing or things that are just not current fashion, those would also be considered unacceptable. You want to pay close attention to the neckline area of infant clothing for formula stains, and I'll show you some examples of that in a moment. Making sure zippers are zipped, buttons are intact, and the consignor can be doing this while you're looking at their items. So if they have hoodies with zippers that are not zipped, ask them to please zip them because the clothing will fall off the hanger as soon as it's placed onto the rack, and also it just looks a lot better when that extra step is taken. The clothing does need to smell good. If you sense smoke smell or pet odor, those are unacceptable. We have many children with allergies. We do not need that type of smelly clothing on the racks. It also permeates and gets into, somebody might have brought really nice fresh selling clothing, and if someone brought something in with smoke, that's going to transfer, and that's not what we want. And then for this season in particular, you want to look for excessive pilling on pajamas or swimsuits, and I'll show some examples of that as well. So here's some pictures of what I'm talking about. On these swimsuit, this is really pilly, so you want to look at the bottom to make sure that there could be some of that, and that's okay. We expect that when we have a used garment, but if it's so excessive that it looks really bad, then that would be rejected. Over here in this madras fabric, sometimes it's hard to see stains, but you need to look at it closely to examine that. This is unacceptable. And here, clearly this is unacceptable. Around the neckline of this infant item, there are formula stains. And so those things you would put to the side and explain to the consignor that we are unable to take that. Sorry, got ahead of myself here. Okay. So the final steps in this process, as I said, each consignor will come to you with an inspection card. You're going to note on there if the consignor participated in the Perfect Consignor program, making sure that the tags are printed on the correct color of stock and the hangers were pointing the right direction. If there were any rejected items, you would mark that here, and then your name in case there are any questions. The next part of the process is shoe inspection. So you may recall in the fall, we had two separate lines, one for clothing and one for shoes. And we're trying to streamline that in the spring. So they will bring to you all of their shoes, and the shoes are going to be placed into one of these white bushels. So we'll put all the shoes in that. If you need more than one of these white containers, that's fine. We have plenty of them. And then a runner or yourself, if you can, will take the shoes physically to the shoe inspection area. The consignor is not asked to do that. The only thing that they're going to be asked to do is come back and pick up their rejected shoes, but they no longer have to wait in line for the shoes. Just simply put all the shoes into one of these baskets, and then they will be inspected, and I will talk about what we're looking for in shoe inspection in just a moment. Some additional final steps, you want to remind the consignor to pick up their rejected items. You'll also remind them to pick up their pre-sale passes, and then ask the consignor if they have anything with a polyfill, and that includes things like a boppy, a car seat, a stroller. Those will need to be sprayed, so they'll go to the sanitation area to have that taken care of. And above all, it's important to be kind and helpful. Consignors, they could be tired. This can be a little bit emotional. If you sense that someone is getting upset about items being rejected, that's where you need to call in the team leader. You can call in me, and we will take that consignor aside and explain to them why some of their items were accepted or not acceptable. You should not be put in that position. We will take care of that. So on to the shoes. Shoes must be new or gently worn. We want to be picky but reasonable. So in the fall, we started a new shoe inspection, and I think in some cases we were a little overly picky with the shoes, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but we still want to have a good selection available for our shoppers. So you need to use really good judgment, and I'm going to share some specific examples. Some of the things that we're specifically looking for are excessive scuff marks, rips, really dirty shoes, smelly shoes. Those types of things are not going to sell, and we don't want to take up room on the shelves for them if we know that they're clearly unacceptable. Things like athletic cleats or dance shoes are going to show more wear and tear, so be mindful of that, and please use good judgment when reviewing those types of shoes. And shoes must be appropriate for children. We do have size limitations, so we'll accept up to size 5 in big kids, so not little kids, but 5 big kids, which is equivalent to a size 7 adult. Anything more than a size 7 adult is unacceptable. And I realize that there are children that have larger feet than a size 7. Unfortunately, there had to be a cutoff somewhere, and that seemed to accommodate most children up to the age of 10 to 12, which is really our demographic. Shoes must also be seasonally appropriate. So you want to look for sandals, open-toed shoes, flip-flops, Crocs that don't have a fleece lining. Sneakers are okay for both the fall and the spring sales, and dance and athletic shoes are okay. Rain boots are also acceptable, whereas snow boots are not. Roller skates are okay, but ice skates are not. So again, we're thinking about what a child would typically wear between April and September. So let me show you a few pictures of things that are acceptable versus non-acceptable. So all of these shoes would be considered in. These are things that, they're swim shoes or sandals. This shoe at the bottom left-hand corner, these probably could be acceptable for the fall sale also. So there's going to be a little bit of crossover. You do want to make sure that these shoes are appropriately tied together. So this is good with a zip tie for these pink shoes. Something's going to need to be put in place so that these are put together. The sandals, clearly, those are acceptable for the spring sale. Some other examples, which might not be as clear, a little bit of wear and tear is okay. So on the shoes on the left, you can see there's a little bit of wear and tear on the toes. That's okay. It's not the entire toe, and so those I would consider to be acceptable. Clearly these are acceptable, and these are bigger kids' shoes, but they are a size 7 adult, so that would be okay, and that's the same for both boys and girls. What's out? Here are some examples of shoes that are not accepted. So these shoes on the left, the shoelaces are clearly frayed. The toes, they're scuffed all the way across the front of them. Those are things that are not going to wash out or be able to be rubbed out with like a leather cleaner. So that would be considered unacceptable. These sandals in the middle, I don't think they need much explanation, but those are not acceptable. The lining of the shoe is filthy dirty. It's also ripped. Over here, this is where we can have some subjectivity, but this scuff mark in the leather goes all the way across the shoe. Same thing with these sneakers, and these would be considered unacceptable. You can tell consigners that if their items were rejected because they were excessively dirty, we will have supplies if they clean them up. These Crocs, I think, are an excellent example of what just 30 seconds of cleanup can do. The shoe on the left is dirty, but the shoe on the right is clean. So the difference between selling, the shoe on the right and the shoe on the left is huge. People are more likely to buy this clean shoe versus this dirty shoe. So if you're rejecting shoes because they're dirty, you can explain to the consignor that they do have the opportunity to clean them up, represent them, and we will gladly accept them. Our goal is to take as many shoes as possible. We want to have as much of a selection as we possibly can for our customers. There's just some things that don't reflect well on everybody else who took the time to clean up their shoes. So those are some examples of things that you might want to clean up. This shoe on the right-hand side, this is pretty good. I would just encourage them to use a brush to clean that up a little bit, and it's perfectly fine. Some other examples of things that are out for the sale. As I said, rain boots are good. We want rain boots, but this lining in this shoe is not good. So these would not be rejected because they're rain boots. These would be rejected because the lining is ripped. And then these shoes, you can see they have a little bit of scuff on the toe. That would be acceptable because they're suede, and suede is going to do that. These would be unacceptable, however, because they're suede, and it's just the wrong season. So the consignor can bring those back in the fall, but they are unacceptable for the spring. Some final steps with shoe inspection. There will be a separate notepad in the shoe inspection area where you will note the consignor's number. All you need is the letter and the first 3 digits, your name, and reason why you're rejecting the shoes. This is a carbonated form, so we will keep the white copy, and then there's a yellow copy underneath that, and that will go in the basket with the shoes for them to pick up as they leave the sale. So that's just a summary of that. You'll keep the inspection ticket for each consignor, note the number of shoes that were rejected, and then return those shoes to the unaccepted reject area, which is also where their clothing will be. So the rejected shoes are going to be placed in that basket, taken up to the table. The accepted shoes will go in IKEA bags or boxes by size and by gender. We will be putting out the accepted shoes throughout the sale, or excuse me, throughout the inspection process. Consignors are not responsible for putting away their shoes. So you can explain to them, if they come to your area, that we'll take care of this at either the end of drop-off or whenever we have time throughout the day during inspection. So they don't need to do anything with their shoes. The shoe area, just like clothing, can be very sensitive. People can disagree with you. There is subjectivity involved. If you have problems with a consignor getting upset about what's being accepted and what's not accepted, again, there will be a team leader in the shoe inspection area, and it's that person's job or my job to very calmly explain why things are accepted and not accepted. So I do hope that this brief tutorial was helpful for you. You will have written guidelines at both the clothing and shoe inspection area that will summarize what we said. There will also be team leaders there to assist you throughout your shift. And if you have any questions prior to the sale, please don't hesitate to call or email me. Again, thank you for your participation, and I look forward to seeing you very soon.